A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Thanks for tuning in to another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company. My name is Cam Edwards. It is great to have you with us. On the program here, in a matter of moments, you're going to hear from the Second Amendment Foundation's Alan Gottlieb about the latest order by a governor to close gun stores around a state. We saw this with New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy. We've had a lot of confusion around the country because governors have, in many cases, not said anything about firearms retailers, whether or not they are essential or non-essential. They're sort of leaving it up to the counties. That's been the case in, states from California to Texas. But unfortunately, Washington State Governor Jay Inslee announced on Wednesday that his shelter-in-place order does not consider firearm retailers to be essential businesses. They have been ordered closed despite the long lines that we have seen all around the country from individuals, many of them for the very first time in their lives, wanting to purchase a firearm and ammunition so that they can protect themselves and their families during this current state of emergency. We've also seen a couple of lawsuits filed, both in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, where that lawsuit was not successful, but Pennsylvania Governor Tom Wolf ended up modifying his order and allowing gun stores to open up as long as they practice specific social distancing requirements. That idea offered up by several justices on the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court who expressed their concern that the governor's original order, which simply, again, didn't mention gun stores one way or the other and amounted to them having to close, that was going to be a violation of the Second Amendment rights of Pennsylvania residents. Even in a state of emergency, your rights do not disappear. And unfortunately, we have seen a couple of governors around the country and a few sheriffs, Los Angeles County Sheriff Alex Villanueva, looking at you. We've seen a couple of elected officials around the country take the position that absolutely they can restrict your rights and infringe on your rights in the name of public safety during this current crisis. So, again, spoke with Alan Gottlieb of the Second Amendment Foundation about the latest ban on gun stores opening, again, this one in Washington State, and what the Second Amendment Foundation plans to do about it. Take a look and a listen. Alan, thank you so much, sir, for coming on the program. It's great talking with you today.
Great to be back with you, Cam. Thanks for all you do.
Well, thank you for all that you're doing, too. I know that the Second Amendment Foundation has been very busy over the past couple of weeks. These are challenging times for everybody, including gun owners. And, unfortunately, we have seen a couple of governors, a handful of local elected officials decide that this is going to be a great time to try to deny people the ability to acquire firearms for self-defense, including Washington State Governor Jay Inslee. I'm curious, the Second Amendment Foundation, I know, has been involved in litigation already. What can you tell us about the cases that the Second Amendment Foundation has brought to date and where those cases are being brought?
Well, let me start with the big one, which is New Jersey, which is probably the best case because New Jersey basically has an absolute ban at this point on being able for anybody to be able to buy a firearm. The New Jersey case was filed, and actually today, a big update on it is we filed our show cause motion. We amended the complaint and added on more plaintiffs who were injured, and likewise filed our summary argument and asked for an immediate injunction. And that's filed the court today, and now we have to hear back from the court, and I assume it'll move pretty quickly now. So we're really online in New Jersey, which is the major case. You mentioned Washington State, so I'll give you an update on that. We're working on bringing that suit right now. We've now got our plaintiffs in line, and the briefs are being worked on to be filed. And I don't know how quickly we filed, today, tomorrow, or the next day. But I'm hoping by the close of business this week, that case in Washington State is filed as well. We're also working on a number of other cases. A county in North Carolina. We're looking at the state of Colorado. We're looking at Massachusetts. We're looking to file against cities in California, San Diego and San Jose. We're looking at Massachusetts. And of course, we were going to be doing more work in Pennsylvania, but the governor reversed himself in Pennsylvania, and now gun stores are considered essential businesses. And we've done a lot of work to get states to say that gun stores are essential businesses all across the country, and more are coming out and saying that. And it's interesting that in places like Illinois and Connecticut, We have anti-gun governors that never do us any favors. They're admitting that gun stores are essential places of businesses and people have a right to buy the means of self-protection, particularly in times of national emergency. There's another handful of other places, a couple cities in Texas. Dallas is one of them, which is surprising. We have places in Florida. Part of our hope is we won't have to litigate. Letters threatening will back them down, and/or the governors in the states or the legislatures, like they've done here in Arizona, will come out and say that you can't. These local governments can't do this. So far we're online and things are looking good, but that's a lot of work to add onto our plate in a 2-week period.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm glad that you brought up Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, Connecticut Governor Ned Lamont, as well as the modification to Governor Wolf's emergency order that now allows these gun stores to open. We also saw this in Dallas, as a matter of fact. Dallas County judge came out, I believe it was Wednesday night, and said gun stores can remain open, which is very good to see. And I've been encouraging gun owners to act locally where they see this happening right now too. Reach out to your local officials. Tell them that gun stores are essential. Remind them of the long lines that we've seen over the past couple of weeks. Clearly, Americans understand that protecting themselves and their families is absolutely critical at this point in time. And Alan, I mean, I don't know how you feel about this. I understand. Talking about like the Wake County Sheriff in North Carolina. I understand that law enforcement has a lot on their plates right now, that they're trying to protect the health and safety of their deputies, that they don't want to see, half their force all of a sudden in isolation or come down sick with the coronavirus. I get all of that. And I think that gun owners are willing to give folks a little bit of leeway here during this time of emergency. In Pennsylvania, for example, Governor Tom Wolf saying the gun stores can remain open, but you've got to do it by appointment only. Look, that's not perfect. Nobody says that that's perfect, but we can live with that. We can work with that. But it's when those rights are deprived, right? When the sheriff in Wake County, for example, simply says, well, look, we're overwhelmed with the number of people who are applying to purchase a handgun, so we're just going to shut off all applications for the next 5 or 6 weeks. That's not acceptable. That's not a regulation. That is an infringement on Americans' rights.
That's totally correct. And in North Carolina, the Second Amendment Foundation has one case law there. In our case, Bateman versus Purdue, we stopped this from happening before in North Carolina. And I'm sure we're going to win again. I'd like to also point out Los Angeles County had the same ban on gun stores and being opened, and that's been rescinded as well. So we are making progress. The problem is it's slow and it's an uphill battle when you have so many different jurisdictions attacking gun rights all at the same time.
That's right. And it's tough because, look, I mean, every organization has limited resources. Lawsuits are not free. You're paying attorneys. There are filing fees. This is not something that, can be done on the cheap. And so when you are facing this multi-pronged assault right now from a lot of different jurisdictions and a lot of different states, it can be very difficult to try to match every one of these orders with a lawsuit, right? So what is your advice to those gun owners out there when they see something like this happen, when all of a sudden their sheriff or their governor or their county executive says, you know what, maybe gun stores aren't essential. I think we're going to tell them to shut down.
Well, first, I'd like to ask them to contact the Second Amendment Foundation at saf.org and let us know what's happening in their local area, because sometimes they find out a lot quicker than we do, so we can get on it right away. But everything you said about funding all these lawsuits at the same time is true. We also have an extra, fly in the ointment here, and that is with the coronavirus and the panic that's out there and people, losing jobs and everything else. Our funding base is something that's being questionable right now. So not only do we have all this money going out real quickly, we may not have any income coming in. So any of your listeners, viewers that can come along and make a donation at saf.org be greatly appreciated right now, because we don't know what our financial future is going to look like. We're taking on all these burdens because we need to do it, because somebody has to be out there protecting the Second Amendment.
Talking again with Alan Gottlieb of the Second Amendment Foundation. And I realize we're still, pretty early on, all things considered, into this abnormal situation that could extend for, a few more weeks, maybe a few more months. But I'm curious, have you given any thought, Alan, to what the Second Amendment debate looks like on the other side of this? I mean, we've seen, by all accounts, gun stores are saying about half of their customers right now are new gun owners, people who've never owned a firearm before in their life, but now all of a sudden they want that protection and that peace of mind. What kind of impact does that have in the gun rights debate going forward?
I think a really great one, and particularly in fact that a lot of these first-time gun buyers are turning out to be Democrats who now all of a sudden realize there's a need to have a firearm. What's interesting, Cam, is you give that, from the gun store side, the sales are up, the new people coming in, first-time buyers. What's interesting for our lawsuits, for our plaintiffs, we need people who don't own a firearm, who are trying to buy one and are being denied. So it's for us finding plaintiffs. It's been kind of interesting to find them as quickly as we have from people that have never been on our mailing list, people that haven't been our supporters, but all of a sudden they call us and say, hey, I just got denied to be able to gun because they shut the gun stores down in my state. So all of our plaintiffs are first-time gun buyers as well, and that's a great sign.
That is a really good sign. And it's, again, I wish we weren't in this situation. All things considered, I wish we were back to the old fights of just a few weeks ago, but we are where we are. And again, I think we have to do everything we can to ensure that not only does America come out stronger on the other side of this, but that our right to keep and bear arms comes out stronger as well.
Well, my hope is some of the court decisions we get will help do that and help build some of the foundation for future case law. As I'm sure you're aware, 80% of the case law that's been won in the courts protecting Second Amendment rights has been won by the Second Amendment Foundation and our attorneys. So we want to keep building on that and make sure that future generations have their firearms rights, intact. And basically, it's a part of our plan of winning firearms freedom, one lawsuit at a time.
Alan Gottlieb with the Second Amendment Foundation. Listen, I appreciate you coming on the program, sir. Be safe, be well, and be free. We'll talk to you soon. Now, before we get to our armed citizen story, as well as our good deed of the day, yes, we're bringing it back. We do have some emails from you to get to. Email address, cam.edwards@bearingarms.com. You can also tweet at me, at Cam Edwards on Twitter. Again, just curious to see what life is like where you live. What are the gun stores like? If you've been able to get to a gun store lately. We heard from Shane, who says, I have not heard anybody talk about the likely potential for massive numbers of residents from states like New York and California that are already talking about months-long shutdowns, fleeing to other states that are not as hard hit. This seems like a big problem in containing the virus, not to mention the chaos that would ensue from the scale of desperate people traveling, with many having no destination or planned place to stay. Love the show, says Shane. Thank you, Shane. And, that is sort of one of those worst case scenarios, right, that we should be thinking about. We shouldn't be assuming that that's going to be the reality, but there is nothing wrong right now with game planning out scenarios that you desperately hope do not come to pass. We have already seen in recent days some folks suggesting that, well, maybe New York needs to be quarantined. Maybe we need a lockdown for New York City or New York State, similar to what was put in place in Wuhan province when the coronavirus was first reported there. You had an entire province that was, in essence, locked down. People were not allowed to leave. We are not an authoritarian nation. And we cannot do the things that China did to supposedly slow and prevent the spread of the coronavirus. I say supposedly because I honestly, I don't know how much I believe what's coming out of China at the moment. Authoritarian regimes do have a tendency to not tell the truth when things aren't going well. So it's going to be constitutionally very, very difficult to put in place an order that would prohibit all New Yorkers, for instance, from leaving their state, or all New York City residents from leaving their city and traveling elsewhere. But I know that it is a concern. I think it was Wednesday afternoon. I think it was Dr. Bricks during the coronavirus update of the White House had said that they're recommending basically anybody leaving New York City shelter or quarantine themselves, put themselves in self-isolation for a period of 14 days because of the spread of the coronavirus in New York City. We've also seen some concern expressed about New Yorkers traveling to Long Island. A lot of wealthier New Yorkers who may have, summer homes or beach homes out in Long Island Sound, and they're now leaving the city and they're going to these slightly less populated areas and trying to ride out the coronavirus there. In fact, the Associated Press, Shane, had a story yesterday about rural America and their concerns, not necessarily about an influx of refugees fleeing the state of California or New York, but just in terms of what the spread of the coronavirus might mean in rural areas. And I think don't quote me on this, but the Associated Press had a statistic about the available number of ICU beds in urban hospitals versus rural hospitals. And on average, a rural hospital, I think, has 8 ICU beds compared to 20-something beds for a suburban or an urban hospital. I can tell you here in Farmville, Virginia, which I would consider to be pretty rural, about an hour west of Richmond, about 3 hours south of D.C., population of about 8,000 or so. Our local hospital, right now we have 2 reported cases. One was a college student in Farmville who tested positive a couple of weeks ago. And then on Tuesday of this week, I believe we saw a second positive test in Prince Edward County, Virginia. So the local hospital where we are right now has set up separate outside screenings. They're screening everybody going into the hospital. They're not allowing visitors in. If you're a patient, you can go in, but they're screening you beforehand. They're testing your temperature. They're taking down some information. Have you traveled anywhere? That information, by the way, is going to be, I think, less valuable as we go on, because now we're talking about community transmission as opposed to individuals who may have caught this overseas or while they were traveling. But they're doing that to try to minimize the potential of exposure within the Farmville hospital there, because if all of a sudden you now have a large number of healthcare workers getting sick or patients who are in the hospital for other reasons and now they're testing positive for the coronavirus, that could simply be devastating for this small hospital. My wife's getting ready to go in for her chemotherapy treatment tomorrow. Hopefully, knock on wood, 3rd time's the charm. She's not been able to get it the past couple of weeks because her blood levels have been all messed up. So she's gone down there. She's been tested. She's sat in the room for a few minutes, but she has not been able to get her test. Thankfully, the oncology clinic in Farmville is in a separate building from the main hospital. I would like to think that would help minimize the potential of exposure, but again, not 100%. So anyway, long rambling answer for you, Shane, for a very good question. And, again, I don't know what the easy answer is, if there is one. We've already seen Dare County, North Carolina, which is the Outer Banks. They've basically set up roadblocks that say only residents are allowed in. Now, it's pretty easy to do so when you've got basically 2 or 3 ways into the county. And one side of the county is the Atlantic Ocean, right? It's easier to isolate yourself than it would be Prince Edward County, Virginia, for example, trying to close off every road in and out of Prince Edward County. That's going to be a difficult situation. Doing the same thing with all of the roads in and out of California or in and out of New York. Again, I think that's going to be an impossible measure. Mark writing in as well says, I want to share a letter from a fellow in a group up here in Connecticut. I thought it was fantastic. To all of my so-called friends who've made comments over the past few weeks regarding coming to my house if things get bad. You're not coming. You're not invited. You voted for gun control. You've been adamant in your support for coastal elites who've threatened my freedom, my safety, and my status as a law-abiding citizen. You've ridiculed me and my kind and have worked aggressively to defame and disarm us. You've chosen to adopt the worldview that society is an unwavering constant, immune to disruption. You've believed that it cannot fail, despite the fact that our way of life, our culture, and civility has always just been one disaster away from collapse. No police to protect you, no electricity to warm and cool you, no grocery store to feed you. You have viewed modern society as impervious to breakdown, despite countless ancient and modern examples of the most powerful societies falling into ruin. You're seeing for the first time how frail our society is, that it's on life support in the best of times. And some of you are beginning to understand that blind faith in a series of man-made systems may not be the most sustainable survival approach. You're realizing that without neat little prepackaged rations from the market, you have no skill or ability to feed yourself and your family. You are realizing that without neatly labeled bottles of lighter fluid, you have no ability or skill to build a fire for warmth. You are now realizing that a gun in the holster of a police officer who can or won't respond does not protect you when the laws that you voted for cease to exist. And there's only you and hunger and countless hungry people who would do anything to survive. You are realizing that by voting your guns away, you have voted your survival away too. Coronavirus will not be the death of our society, but it should be a wake-up call to how fragile our society really is. It should be a realization that the illusion of societal security is always one disaster away from fracturing, and that the real world, the natural world, is harsh and cruel, and survival is earned, not freely given. The fee to come to my house if things get bad is your guns and your ammo and your skill set. The fee is an equal matching of my labors to ensure the survivability of me and my family. In a things got bad moment, there's no room for dead weight. My skill set, my preparations, my equipment may be of use to you, but your lack of skill set, lack of preparation, and lack of equipment is of no use to me. When the haze clears and things normalize, get yourself straight, get yourself prepared, because otherwise you're not coming. You're not invited. Mark, that should be a wake-up call for a lot of Americans. And I listen, I do think that there are a lot of Americans who are getting that wake-up call right now. You know, this is all anecdotal evidence, but a lot of gun stores around the country are saying about half of their customers, and in some cases more, are people who have never owned a gun before in their life. And what those folks do, not only with that firearm, but what those folks do with the fact that they're now gun owners is going to be critically important. Gun control advocates are losing the argument right now. I mean, their argument for years has simply been, don't own a gun, right? That's their definition of gun safety. Don't own a gun. Yeah, there you go. Now you're safe. Well, again, a lot of Americans are disregarding that advice right now. And gun control activists are reacting by trying to shame those Americans, by trying to scare those Americans. They're certainly not trying to educate those Americans. No gun safety group in the country is offering up any sort of firearms safety training right now. Now, we reported at bearingarms.com, Putnam County Bucks County, Pennsylvania Sheriff, teaming up with the NRA to offer online training for new gun owners. They had an online seminar. Hundreds of people were watching locally, and they went through just basics of, look, here's how you safely handle the firearm. Here's how you unload it. Here's how you load it. Here's how you clean it. That's great, but that's not coming from the gun safety groups. That's coming from Second Amendment organizations and law enforcement, right? So I do believe that when the dust settles and when the country starts to get back to some semblance of normalcy, we are going to see, I think, an impact in terms of the gun rights debate. Not only are politicians like Governor Jay Inslee and Governor Phil Murphy going to have to answer for their deprivations of a constitutional right during a state of emergency, but we have the potential right now of adding hundreds of thousands, if not a million or more, politically engaged new gun owners to our ranks. So I would encourage any gun owner watching right now, welcome these new gun owners. Embrace them, help them get that education, that basic firearm safety instruction that they need. You can point them to resources at the NRA, USCCA, Gun University, National Shooting Sports Foundation, perhaps their local sheriff's office. There are a lot of gun owners and Second Amendment supporters out there that are doing their part to ensure that these new gun owners at least have the rudiments of gun safety education. And then again, as life starts to return to normal, ranges open back up, we can gather in more than groups of 10. It's going to be critically important for us to help those new gun owners again, in their journey and with their training and with their political activism as well. All right, let's get to today's armed citizen story, which is actually an update from an armed citizen story earlier in the week. We had told you just some basic details about a home invasion in Georgia. 3 individuals tried to break into this home. One of them was shot. Now we're learning more details here. This is from Fox 5 in Atlanta, Georgia. And that's a picture from the scene there in Marietta, Georgia. It was late Sunday night. Police say at least 3 individuals tried to break into this home in Cobb County, and a 17-year-old resident, according to police, opened fire on those intruders. 17. Keep in mind, in the state of Virginia this year, we were successful, thankfully, in defeating a measure that would have made it a crime for the parents of that 17-year-old to allow their 17-year-old access to that firearm for self-defense. Yeah, those parents would have been charged with let's see, the first version of the bill was a felony. Then it was reduced down to a misdemeanor. Then they raised the age or they lowered the age down to 14. But this would have been punishable under law had this taken place in Virginia and had gun control advocates got their way. That's what they want. That's the world they want us to live in, where the 17-year-old protects himself with a firearm and then mom and dad go to jail for it. So according to Fox 5 in Atlanta, the 17-year-old not facing any charges. Two of the would-be burglars ended up getting shot. 21-year-old Mashavella Bagsby died. A 16-year-old initially got away, but has since been arrested. There was doorbell footage of another suspect, Taurus Miller, also 21, who was shot. He has survived. According to police, they say that Miller and the 16-year-old have been charged with murder, aggravated assault, aggravated armed robbery, burglary, and possession of a firearm during the commission of a crime. So chances are, even as we're seeing some jail cells let loose nonviolent offenders right now to try to prevent the spread of coronavirus, sounds like that 16-year-old, that 21-year-old, they're going to stay behind bars for a while. Hope they enjoy riding out the pandemic there from a jail cell. And our good deed of the day today from Washington State. You know, it is tough right now for kids, I think, in particular, dealing with the coronavirus. And one young boy, 3 years old, turning 3 years old, couldn't have a birthday party. So his parents did the next best thing. Honk for Mason's birthday. That was the sign in Richland, Washington. And Mason Tracy got a lot of honks. KEPR says for weeks, Mason's mom was planning a Nerf gun war birthday party for her son, but again, they had to cancel the plans there. His grandparents, great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents all invited. Also couldn't come now because grandparents, great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents probably at a higher risk of contracting the coronavirus and suffering serious consequences if they do. So Mason's grandmother, Tara, found an idea for a parade party where people would drive by the party and honk at the birthday boy. And so Mason stood at the edge of his property, waved to people who passed by, including a Richland police officer who turned his lights and sirens on for Mason. His mom says that friends, family, and total strangers have been driving by to wave and honk at Mason on his third birthday. So that's pretty cool. I got to say, that's pretty special. My youngest, my twins, are turning 15. Those of you who've been watching Cam and Company for a while, that's going to make you feel really old. I know. Imagine how it makes me feel. But they're going to be turning 15 in a few days. And they're not at the age where they want to have like big, huge parties, but we have a tradition at our place every year where we do a special dinner. They get to pick what they want for dinner. My wife will make dinner. So there's this Chinese dish that my kids love that I introduced them to. It's called shrimp and lobster sauce. And now I have to try to figure out if I can find shrimp anywhere. It's just my kids can get their birthday dinner. They're not going to get any presents this year, at least not right now. They got a couple of cards from grandparents, but I'm hopeful that I'm going to be able to at least give them their special birthday dinner. If not, I might have them stand on the side of the road and have people honk at them. Anyway, I hope you have a great rest of your Thursday. Thanks so much for being a part of the program today. We will be back tomorrow with more of the latest Second Amendment news and information from all across the nation. And Monday, we've got a special VIP Gold Editors Chat coming up. So if you're a VIP Gold member at Town Hall Media, you can join me Monday afternoon. We're going to do a discussion. You can ask whatever questions you want. I'll be happy to give you any answers about what's going on with our Second Amendment rights around the country. You can also subscribe to Town Hall Media at YouTube. You can subscribe to Bearing Arms Cam and Company at Apple Podcasts. And, of course, you can tune in each and every day for the latest Second Amendment news and information from all across the nation. Be safe, be well, be free. And we'll see you here soon with another edition of Bearing Arms Cam and Company.